Is America asking the wrong questions? This Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Mental Dialogue Perspective brings together conservative George P. Brooks and D'Juan Hopewell, host of the Blackjack podcast, for an explosive discussion on the Karmelo Anthony case, black-on-black crime, black spending habits, politics, and race. No talking points, just hard questions and honest dialogue. Live at youtube.com/mental dialogue, the Mental Dialogue Perspective, where the culture thinks out loud. What's up, everybody? This is the Mental Dialogue Perspective, our pop-up show. If you rock with us for a long time, we know it ran 8 years long on audio only, and then we finally advanced over to current times, and we're rocking with video, as I like to say. I am your host, Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates. Again, thank y'all for being with us on the Mental Dialogue Perspective. I got a couple of esteemed guests. Hoping to get my co-host up in this thing pretty quickly. So hopefully she'll join us. But in the event, even if she's not, the show must go on. I typically like to introduce my brand new guest, but I'm going to actually go with the old time guest, my man, D'Juan Hopewell from Blackjack Podcast, and this just so he can kind of give a rendition to our guest of how we do it, which is basically thank you for being here with us, brother, and just give a little bit of your background as we discuss hard conversations on race, sex, and culture. So whatever part of your background can relate to how we get down today, share that, and then we'll introduce our special guest today.
Man, I appreciate you having me. Like I said, the Blackjack Podcast. It's a podcast we just explore how the civil rights went left. We look at the civil rights movement critically. We believe that any football team has to view the tape from last week to get better for next week. And so we're just looking at the tape and looking at strategic flaws, missed opportunities, respectfully, but to say, how can we get better? So when it comes to race, being a Negro in this country, I'm pretty well versed in the topic.
I could dig it just by sheer nature. Okay, a special guest just dropped, so we're gonna make sure this show goes on. Sometimes that happens with technology. All right, brother's trying to get back in here. Okay, we just got him back in here. Sounds good. Okay, what's up? If you will, George P. Brooks, author. I can't see your tag down there, but if you will, brother, thank you for on last minute notice agreeing to be a part of our show this morning. So if you will, tell them who you are. And we'll start playing our first clips. If you are a first-time watcher of our show, we play various clips from around the social media in regards to race, sex, and culture, and react to those actual clips. But again, thank you, Mr. Brooks, for being with us today.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me. My name is George P. Brooks. Originally from Memphis, Tennessee. Went through mental illness, addiction, homelessness, a bunch of issues coming up. About 8 years ago in my recovery, I started a nonprofit called Meta Association. We've dealt with black male mental health, fighting recidivism, and promoting fatherhood for 8 years, and we continue that to this day. I'm also an author, anime fan, worked in the wrestling business, as a father, amateur philosopher, and also a black conservative, black Christian conservative. So I appreciate you all having me on. I'm looking forward to this broadcast.
No,
well,
absolutely.
I'm sorry. Forgive me, man. He said Memphis. You got to tell me what part of town you repping. Orange Mound, you North Memphis. You know what I mean? You got to tell me something.
I lived in South Memphis, Whitehaven, my teenage years, and when I left, I lived in Fraser for 10 years. So I'm from all over.
All right. That's what's up, man.
Man, we ain't doing no homie shout outs on this show, man. No, I can't trip. My first roommate in college was from Mifftown, so I'm definitely thinking Memphis. Love this, the city of blues, baby. It's all to the good. All right, man, let's go ahead and get this thing started again. If you're a first-time watcher, we talk race, sex, and culture better than anybody else in the world, if you will. And so we're going to start with our first clip, get our guest reactions, and again, hope we can get McQueen on, because I don't like to do these shows without the feminine perspective anytime we do these conversations. So hopefully we'll get her on, but if not, the show must go on. With that said, let me pull up this first clips, and we'll basically let both of you react to it, and we'll have a dialogue and continue to do that throughout the show. For those that are watching, if you're in the comments, if your comment is related to what we're talking about, we all try to get some of y'all comments on the show as well. So let's get this thing popping. All right, here's our first clip. Let me pull it up real quick. Give me 1 second, y'all. Slow in the studio today. All right, here we go. Here's our first clip to have our guests react to.
The fact that, and I think this is in the same chapter, black slaves were worth as an asset group more than railroads, all banks, all insurance companies, and all the currency in America combined in 1850. That slavery had produced cotton, the gold standard of that moment, the cotton and tobacco, and that 47% of the economy, the export economy, was based on cotton. And that Wall Street didn't start largely in New York. It started, Lehman Brothers and others, that started in Montgomery, Alabama. Don't trust me. By the way, do your own research.
100% correct.
They were there because that's where we were. That's where the cotton gin was. That's where the ports were. That's where the machinery of cotton production was. I'm trying to get us out of the emotions, first of all, because whenever you make an emotional decision, it's a bad one.
Correct.
The through line is that either through forced labor, forced importing, forced immigration, we got on the wrong boat, or voluntary immigration, this country has forced or attracted the best of the best to its shores. Now, I want you to think about that now. Not every Nigerian came to America. Not every Caribbean brother, sister came to America. Not every Italian came to America. You go on and on. Polish. Who came to America? These strivers. Let's take slavery, put it aside for just 1 second. Because I think that's the best of the best, too, of that age, because that was the agricultural geniuses.
Right.
So that it wasn't our choice. They forced us to come here, but it still was the best of the best. So everybody else, $2. What's that story? $2. I'm on this America 250 list that just came out from Forbes of the greatest self-made whatever.
So we start out with the cut from D'Juan Hope Bryant. Pretty sure most of you have seen him or aware of that or know of that brother. And so I just wanted to kind of set the stage for this discussion and kind of one saying, hey, there's always this conversation, a couple things. There's always this conversation that, in a sense, America was built off our backs. I don't know how many people are aware of how much, again, the assets of our ancestors, basically more than all other assets in the country combined. That's the value that our ancestors were at one point. So when we say built off our backs, that's a literal statement, not just something people say figuratively, or I think most people say it figuratively, not understanding the history that, in a sense, was just laid out. The other aspect that I will point out, and then I'll have y'all both react, at your leisure, is D'Juan Hope Bryant starts talking about the best of the best coming here. One of the best things about America is we'll be in the Olympics with four brothers, running that 4x1, four sisters running that 4x1. And then we'll go to the math competition and have all Asian Americans on that list to win that. You know what I'm saying? Like this is America.
Right.
This is America, if you understand what I'm saying. So this is in a sense, the beauty of America. It's the reality of America. And the last part I'll say about it is he's highlighting the best of the best. So the thing about immigrants coming here, it is either the people that have the ability to move, and most people don't understand that 60% of the world do not financially have the ability to move. Right. So they either have the ability to move, so that means they have the means, or they're the most desperate. So you're always talking about the best of the best. And so one of the biggest mistakes you could ever do when it comes to a racial conversation, specifically in America, this applies in every country, but of course our country is a quote unquote melting pot of races. So one of the biggest mistakes you could ever be involved in is a comparison to people that are from a country to immigrants, because immigrants, whether the United States or any other country, it is typically the most desperate or those who have the best means. And so you're basically comparing those who are there to those who are the cream of the cream of where they came from. So it's always an apples to oranges comparison to compare, say, oh, well, look at what those immigrants do or what that immigrant does. And you're looking at the best of the best. Right? The perfect example I give is we know how, if you will, Indian Americans are seen in this country. A lot of them come here on those HB1s and, get the tech jobs that Americans can't fill. Like, that's the reality. And so if a lot of them do well, what I'm saying? But there are people back in India right now that are paying $1 to sleep on the street. Like, we don't talk about the other end of it. D'Juan, I'll start with you. Again, I said a lot in addition to D'Juan Hope Bryant, but I'm just setting the stage for today's discussion. Anything that stood out to you, and then we'll go to Brother Brooks.
I mean, again, historically, it's not a revolutionary concept, right? I mean, after the American Revolution, what we often don't really learn is that America was in the trash can. That was the first Great Depression, if you will. There was no economy, there was nothing. And then the markets that Southern planters were trading with in the Caribbean couldn't do that anymore because that's British, right? I mean, we were stuck. The only thing that pulled us out was cotton. And so by the time you get to the Civil War, I think something like 80% of the world's cotton supply is coming from the U.S. South. How do you flood the market that well? Because you have really cheap prices. How did you get really cheap prices? You have free labor. You know what I mean? It's just like, and so the American industrial, mechanization, all those things were built on. So again, it's not just cotton, right? That's how you get your banks. How do you get your insurance companies? Ask Lloyd's of London about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, ask Aetna. How do you get your universities? Ask Brown University where that capital came from. You know, it's all the way to the Ivy League. So yes, the whole thing is quite literally that. So I mean, it's not like a revolutionary statement unless you come through the American educational system in which you were taught something else, I guess. But as far as like these claims of the best, I like to be careful. Unless your statement can be empirically verified, I'd be very careful with that, right? So I mean, we can go down the line. There are not a whole lot of things America's leading on, to be really candid with you, right? Like, we believe in angels. We're killing that one. But if you want to really go down the line as far as literacy and everything else, it ain't like we number one in everything. And yes, we do cherry pick the best. In other words, to your point, poor people in the huts, they're not immigrating. They're still in the hut. They're still in the hood. And so you're pulling people who are already relatively privileged. You're pulling people who already sort of have access to things. And so it's easy to think yourself amazing, but there's got to be some comparative analysis, right? So let's just take sports. Okay. Soccer. When's the last time we won a World Cup? I don't know, but we have a population way bigger than the teams that we're losing to. So based on that alone, I'm just making a simplistic example. Based on your population size, the means that you have, are you maximizing that? And I think on a lot of different measures, the answer is no. So I would be very cautious in waving the flag and saying we're number one on everything when the data may say otherwise. And some things we are number one on, and that's fine. But I'm just not going to make a blanket statement. We're just crushing it. No, that's not true.
All right, cool. I'm going to go to George here. I want a piece of context. I would like to give clarity. Again, I was talking about the actual immigration aspect. And so what happens is we have, for example, stereotypes. We think about African Americans in this country, but Black expatriates do amazing in the states, countries that they go to as well. Because again, we're talking about those who have the means or those who are most desperate. So again, I'm just talking about the comparison of those that are from a country to those of an immigrant. I'm just highlighting people should not make those comparisons. People do it all the time, but it is literally an apples to oranges comparison. So again, the stereotypes that may exist about African Americans in this country, typically expatriates around Black expatriates around the world do very well. Typically, not all, but I just wanted to make sure that I kept the context of what comparison I was making. All right, go ahead, Brother George.
All right. What was stated was actually very, very true. This country was built off the backs and blood and sweat of Black people. I don't care for the term African Americans, so I'll refer to us as Black people. The thing is, we are always, even to this day, seen as chattel. We're seen as property in this regard. Is in terms of athletics, in terms of entertainment, our value is supplanted. But I think that we have not codified ourselves as a diaspora politically. I think that's where we're really missing, in the sense that we all tend to vote one way instead of spreading ourselves around and being better represented as other cultures do. And I think there are three things that Black people should address in America in order to make ourselves more valuable in areas that are really going to benefit us in terms of politics, policy, and social stature. I think the first thing we need to do as a mental health advocate and founder of a nonprofit is deal with our mental health. I think we as Black people are way behind as far as addressing those issues, not just in terms of diagnosable conditions, but in terms of situational mental health crises as well. I think the second thing we need to do, and regardless of what deity you do or don't believe in, I think we need to return the faith. I think we've allowed the Black church to become corrupt, to become more houses of ideology instead of faith. And the third thing I think we need to do is, aside from that, is to diversify ourselves politically. Let's get out of the civil war that we're in, that I'm seeing every day in terms of Black people, as far as Black conservatives who are starting to speak out being vilified. being attacked, threatened, ostracized. I think that every other culture can have their leftists and their rightists and their centrists, but we seem to not be able to do that. And with that, we're underrepresented politically. It's not that I think any particular party ignores us. It's just they have no reason to cater to us or to address our issues because they know we're not going to vote for them. So I think if we deal with our mental health and deal with those issues and deal with diversification as far as political stance and political
I got you,
ideology,
brother.
that'll help us not be just seen as just property and
I
cattle.
got you. I got you. Okay, cool, good stuff. So I will kind of highlight reacting to the clip. Again, loving all the different perspectives. I want to react to the clips if that makes sense. So let's go
Yes,
to
sir.
another
Yes, sir.
clip from D'Juan Hope Bryant. And again, we're just having what I'm doing is I want to have all the various perspectives and just hear how we think about again these various clips. Some of that stuff will come around with some of the other clips, but let's definitely make sure we respond to the clips. This one is, again, that was D'Juan Hope Bryant highlighting the history. Here's another clip from D'Juan Hope Bryant. I have some critiques of it, so I'll get y'all responses of what he had to say and maybe my critique as well.
76% of all luxury goods are bought by poor people. 76. When I heard the data, I couldn't process it. I'm like, no, this can't be true. It's not just poor working middle class people are striving. My point is it's not purchased by the wealthy. That's my point. When you go look at the Louis Vuitton store and look who's in line. During COVID, the lockdown, you saw the line. That was not wealthy people. It was us.
That's
Right? We're aspiring. No difference why somebody wants a Coca-Cola or they want an iPhone, right? We got $2,000 iPhones, don't have $2 in our bank account. A lot of social media is the psychologist that we never got, the shrink that we never got, the healing we never got. And consumerism, if we're not lucky, if we're not careful today, it's a new color.
All right. So one caveat I want to make sure I make clear: we attack ideas, not people. I'm a fan of D'Juan Hope Bryant's, but I'm finna attack some of his ideas in this dialogue. So I want to make sure people who are first time watching, this is not me decimating D'Juan Hope Bryant, but he got a lot of his information wrong. If you're a long time watcher, I'm a data hog per se. I'm not better than my queen Latrice, who just jumped on this thing. So thank you, Latrice, for jumping in here with us this day. She's a diversity consultant. She does this for a living. So I want to give a little bit of context, and we're just gonna keep this show going versus interrupting it to introduce her. So when she talks, for everybody watching, know she's coming from a very high place of expertise. But here he is, D'Juan Hope Bryant again. I enjoy D'Juan Hope Bryant. In this situation, I wanted to highlight and dialogue. He says 76% of luxury goods are bought by poor people. That is a comment because it's coming from D'Juan Hope Bryant, who has some credibility, a lot of credibility. People will assume he has that right, because a good thing with D'Juan Hope Bryant is I use some of his stats on our Politically Conscious show. Again, I verify those stats. So what happened in this situation, what happened in this one, I went and did my verification, and he missed the boat, not by a little bit, but by a lot. So I'll give the context, and then we'll let y'all dialogue about it as well. So 76% of luxury goods are not bought by poor people, as poor people are considered, what poor people are considered in America. I actually went and looked up the numbers because he said on the clip, he says, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. That's what he said. So that's what made me, being a data hog, say, let me go check these numbers. I go check the numbers, come to find out that 76% is people who make $40,000 to $150,000. So the poor people who don't have any money or don't have $2,000 phones with $2 in their bank account, not that $40,000 is a lot of money. And D'Juan Hope Bryant, who is very wealthy, I'm assuming if he was making $150,000, he might consider that broke again, based on his background. But $150,000 puts you in the top 10% of the country. So I want to highlight that the people that the 76% is literally those who make $40,000 to $150,000. The reason I'm pointing this out is that other 24% are the wealthy who can easily afford it, and they buy more than their share of those wealthy goods at 24%. But that 76%, the reason that this actually matters is because he's presenting it as if those who are poor, and we think of Black people as poor collectively, and we do have too many people that are poor in that category, right? We do have too many people in that, but the assumption is that's where they're spending their money. I always tell people I was an after school instructor in a lot of different schools, and in the poor schools, yeah, I might see a kid come in with a pair of Jordans at the beginning of the year, but by the end of the year, he got a beat up pair of Jordans because this is his only pair of shoes for the year. And I'm just saying, hey, I'm not saying poor people don't buy luxury items, but that number, he's trying to make it seem like that's where we're spending our money, and that's not a reality. Latrice, since you just jumped on the show, I'll let you kind of give us your thoughts, and I'll go to Brother George and then Brother D'Juan. Go ahead, Queen.
Thank you. A lot of people like to harp on that, but actually, researchers, when they study this status spending, and examining Black and white spending gaps more broadly, they found that even after controlling for the main determinants of household spending, and that's income, demographics, and economic status, racial gaps in consumption don't disappear. And what I mean by that is racial inequalities in access to goods and services run deeper than income or wealth differences alone. But when they do it, they're doing it as a means of status signaling. And it's not just Black folk who may not be in that income bracket to afford it. It's not just us. It's humans who do this. And when we pull Black people out and make comments like that, we're saying there's something inherently wrong with us. And so I'm always a little cautious when folks are throwing those stats out that make it seem as if Black folks are just intrinsically broken.
No, absolutely. One other stat, and I'll go to Brother George. Walden did a study and kind of watching the what they call discretionary income spending. And so to keep up with the Joneses aspect ended up being about, for the study they did, ended up being about 3% of discretionary income. Because again, we always talk about the $1.3 trillion that we spend. And you and I on this show, Latrice, talked about 76% of that is going to stuff you need. So it's not a lot of discretionary income, but to a degree, there is this keep up with the Jones statuses, but it's not that people are spending all their money on that. These are just backed up by the data. George,
we're just one more thing.
Go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
When you look at brand and marketing data, Black consumers are 25% more likely to switch brands and are often willing to pay more specifically for products that are actually suited to our needs and preferences. And what this suggests is that some of this is a market failure. That means that we're being underserved by products that we need.
No, good stuff. All right, Brother George, any thoughts about anything you've heard at this point?
Yes, thank you, Latrice, for joining us. And I want to piggyback on her point. It's often depicted as though it's just Black people that quote unquote waste money or slaves to consumerism. And I think it's more an issue of the poor, of the undereducated financially. For a long time, financial information and wherewithal was denied us. I would like to see us as a diaspora spend more discretionary income on assets instead of liabilities. I think it would go to building our wealth more and giving us more economic power for things like boycotts and demonstrations. It would give us more of a voice. But I think that comes down to education about finances, about investments. Instead of spending discretionary income on consumer goods, I would like to see a push in the Black community to acquire things like land and property, things that will build generational wealth, things that will make money be assets and help us more.
I respect the thought. I'm going to go to Brother D'Juan. And one thing I will highlight to you, Brother George, is based on the data presented already, there isn't discretionary income to spend on those things for the poor. I was highlighting that John Hope Bryant was calling those that were making $40,000 to $150,000 poor. That's not considered poor in this country as an individual. So,
No.
Yeah,
Of course, it's going to be skewed by him because he's in a different income bracket. And one thing we do find is that people that have different levels of income perceive. I put it this way: to a lot of people that's not living in reality, most people I know are living off 40,000 as opposed to 2 million. So it depends on where you are in the economic platform and what your perspective is.
No, fair enough. D'Juan, any thoughts on that clip? And we're gonna get to another clip after this.
Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder because as you were playing it, my first thing was like, is that stat actually? I need to see, what I'm saying?
It's a real stat. I did the research. It's a real stat. Yeah. That's how I was able to find who actually has 76%. I was able to look it up and find out, like in this individually, you're considered poor as an individual
Right.
at 15,000 and below.
And I'm glad you broke that there, because I was just thinking like something, we just need to, because we can just say things. It's like, well, has
He
that been
just said it
examined
was. He
critically?
just moved. He
Right.
like Brother George said, poor to him, but not
Right.
poor to Americans. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
And I guess my frustration with these discussions, whether it's black people or white people, we tend to talk to people who are not rich as if they're just the most efficient people in the world. And think about it like this, right? If you went to the year 1980 and you look backward, the homeless population was completely stable at all times. And then all of a sudden it goes crazy. And so you have to ask yourself, did people in 1980 suddenly become irresponsible? And so it is here. Like we have these conversations about financial literacy as if like during the golden age of capitalism, everyone was so responsible and everyone had perfect discipline, and we just lost it. Now it's just like, is that what happened, or did other structural factors change to where people are really having a hard time? And we act like if you just didn't buy that brand of ice cream, like you could have what I'm saying? Like, two things can be true. Can people do better? Absolutely. Hell, Jeff Bezos can do something better. Everyone can do something better. We understand that, but I don't like the fact that we sort of obsess on, I need you to mark every single dollar you spend. And of course you should do that. Yes, you should be, but we understand that. But don't do one without the other. And that's my frustration, particularly with people who have more means. They pretend as if they are singularly brilliant, and I can now talk to you like you're crazy. And it's just like, all right, man, that's the problem, because I bought a drink tonight. That's the problem. That you just solved it.
Yeah, and that's why I use the shoe example for the after school program, being in, doing after school programs in some of the, in a sense, lower mean schools. I'm like, yeah, I can see how a parent got in the line to buy their kid that one pair of $200 Jordans, but $200 as an investment is not something that they're going to turn into being wealthy later. And it's not like they're like the kid who's everybody looks up to is the kid that can afford and buy the Jordans every 3 months. Like that's it. And in those schools, it ain't but a few kids like that. You know what I'm saying? That literally could even do it. So I'm just kind of I'm being real kind of minutia here to kind of highlight your point, the one that we actually think it could solve something, but $200 by itself cannot solve.
Yeah. You have to show me how in 1980 everyone suddenly became irresponsible, and that's why they got home. Right. Like you have to show me that in the data.
No, absolutely. Let's go to another clip. Oh, I'm sorry, George. You want to say something before I go to the next
I was going to say, if you look at things like home ownership in 1980 as opposed to now, during the 80s and along the 90s, we saw more conglomeration of mortgage companies, which actually impeded home ownership, not only for black people, but a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So societal trends, financial trends have actually gotten us kind of to this point. Mm-hmm. The question is, how do we dig ourselves out of it and become be more asset oriented?
No, absolutely. Can't disagree with that. All right, let's go to this next clip.
How did the lowest performing segment of Black America become the face of Black America? Most communities don't promote their worst outcomes as their cultural standard. They celebrate their builders, innovators, business owners, professionals, and families. Yet somehow, in our community, success is often viewed with suspicion while dysfunction is treated as authenticity. The Black community wasn't always like this. There was a time when doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, educators, military officers, and hardworking parents were held up as examples of what young people should aspire to become. Excellence was respected. Discipline was admired. Achievement was celebrated. Today, struggle has become a credential. Bad decisions get excused in the name of solidarity. Accountability is called judgment. And too often, success is labeled not Black enough. For example, the rapper Future built a brand around drug culture, toxic relationships, and destructive behavior. Millions celebrated it. Russell Wilson married Sierra, stepped in to raise his son, another man's son, built a successful career, avoided scandals, and is actively exposing that young man to opportunities in higher education. Yet, who's called cool? Who's called corny? The man promoting chaos gets admired. The man promoting responsibility gets mocked. That's backwards. If we want different outcomes, we have to start celebrating different role models. The future of our community depends on who we choose to elevate to the top.
All right, Brother George, I'll let you respond first to that clip. Any thoughts?
I think
that was,
absolutely.
hold on 1 second. That was, let me give credit to who it goes to. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Let me find. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I'm acknowledging everybody. That was Brother Prada Jones, by the way, that said that for everybody watching. Go ahead, George.
Great. I think he's absolutely right. A lot of that is guided by media. And we have to understand the media is a market like everyone else. You can have a story about a 15-year-old black woman black young girl that gets accepted into college. That's not going to outpace or outclick a negative story about black people. So I think a lot of it is that those examples are out there where we are lifting each other up. The thing is, honestly, that's not popular. That's not what's going to catch on. And I think a lot of it is on us. We have to seek out those stories and promote them so we can give a more divergent view of who we are as a people. And we have to highlight those things more because otherwise we become prone to negative stereotypes, and we need to change the narrative on that.
Good thoughts. Latrice, go ahead, Queen. Any thoughts on that clip?
I think that representation matters. And I think when the media consistently portrays Black folks in certain ways, that's what they latch on to as being cool. One of the things that I recall is when the first Black Panther came out, some successful white producer made the comment that Black kids should not be dressing up as the Black Panther for Halloween. Because it sends them the wrong message. And I thought that was interesting, to say the least, because here is a positive role model that Black kids are latching onto. And why suddenly are white folks concerned about how Black kids dress up for Halloween? And so representation and how we see ourselves represented matters. It matters in even how immigrants see us, because I've done trainings and workshops where folks that have immigrated to this country said that they came here expecting one type of behavior from Black folks because of the things that they saw in the media. But when they got to know Black folks, it was completely different than what they had expected. Also, media exposure has an impact on behavior, and there's no getting around that. And so we know that positive representation has a documented difference. And so we need to make certain that we are doing the things that we can do possibly to have that positive representation in our children's lives. I mean, there's this big thing going on now between India Ari and Young Miami, I think.
Yeah, Young Miami.
About a song. And I had not heard the song before, and I listened to it last night, and I was, I kind of clutched my pearls as a result of that song.
Yeah.
So love their thoughts, brother. One thing I forget what is, because wouldn't be surprised to wonder, but it was that he who controls the images controls the mind. That is a popular quote. I forget who said it, but go ahead, brother D'Juan. Any thoughts about what brother Prada Jones had to say, or either one of our guests had to say?
So there are two sides of this, and they're both very important. And unfortunately, whenever someone presents one side, the other side goes crazy. So let's try to do both sides. Okay. One side of this is I absolutely hate everything he just said, because it's rooted in anti-Blackness. And what I mean by that is our whole world, our society is so entrenched with anti-Blackness. I don't care what color you are. You see the world through those lenses. And I'm Black, and I see the world through anti-Black lenses because it's so thick. And so we have right now a president in the White House who has made it his brand to celebrate mediocrity and unqualified individuals. Linda McMahon has no background in education, and she was elected to lead the Department of Education. He has people negotiating treaties and who have no background in diplomacy, and that is celebrated. But yet, you think the problem is we like rappers. You said, like, it's this type of foolishness that I feel like this is just anti-Blackness, and it's parading as deep and profound, and it's not. It's just anti-Blackness. Here's the other side of this. It's objectively true that images, and media matter. It's objectively true that what you promote matters. Yeah, of course. But I'm saying if you only see it now, on one hand, it's appropriate as Black people to focus on us. Absolutely. But on the other hand, those same people just never see it when Justin Bieber and all these other crazy people get promoted. And Donald Trump, they only see it with a rapper. But it is true that there is a problem with media and image. This is why immigrants can come to this country already hardwired to not like black people because they've been consuming Western media their whole life. This is why a cop on the beat is so damn afraid. Ain't never lived around black. How did you get so afraid of black people? Because of media, because of images, etc. So yes, it is true. And so while we don't control major media outlets, what do we control? On our own platforms, we need to be conscious of this. So yes, both sides are true, but they're both equally important is the problem. And I don't think we give equal credence to both of those.
I think you did a great job of doing that, Brother D'Juan. And I appreciate, really, firstly, I'll just say I appreciate all of y'all thoughts. And I think Brother George, specifically highlight, hey, here's what media shows. So if you're watching, all we're going to say to our culture, if you will, is how intentional you have to be, considering that mass media will do that. And there's a psychology to when Brother George pointed out the type of stories that will catch notoriety versus a positive story versus a negative story. We're also hardwired as humans to do that from psychology. The example I always love to give that is Albert Einstein, when he was teaching a math class one time, he was putting up the nines timetable for those that remember having to do times table. But he wrote it on the board or whatever, and he intentionally put 9 times 9 equals 80, right? So he was doing 1 times 9 equals 9, 2 times 9 equals 18. He was writing it on the board, and he intentionally did 9 times 9 equals 80 instead of 81. And when he did it, all the kids started raising their hand, and he just kept going. 9 times 10 was 90. 9 times 11 was 99. So he just keeps going, and the kids are just going crazy, whatever. And he continues teaching. He's doing this on purpose. He continues kind of teaching the class, and the kids just keep trying to say he got point whatever. And he goes, and he just finally tells them calm down. He goes, all right, what's the problem? He asked one of the kids, and one of the kids points out that 9 times 9 was 80. He says, nobody wanted to mention that I got the other 11 right. And it's, again, we're hardwired that way. For psychology, the deep psychology is for survival. If there's something appears to be dangerous, we're going to point that out first because you instinctively you had to survive. So that still stays with us all the way down to media, understanding that psychology, knowing that a negative story can run on the front page way better than a positive story because of how we're hardwired. This is mental dialogue, so if that's a little too nuanced for everybody.
I had one quick point I wanted to throw in right.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
I think with the media and the way that it's structured, I think it illuminates something for me personally is that while we claim to be a melting pot, I think it states that we're not really. I think we're a melting pot in terms of proximity, but not in terms of applications. In the sense that we can live next door to people of other races, but we really don't interact with them, and that bleeds into us being stereotyped or demonized often in media. So we have access. We can drink out the same water fountain. We can go to the same shopping malls, but we're really not integrating in the sense that on a daily basis we're really not interacting with other races.
Yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous. Go ahead.
I think that
I'm gonna let D'Juan go. Then I got you, Latrice.
Okay.
Oh no, please, the lady. Please.
Okay, all right, ladies first. Absolutely. Go ahead, Queen.
I wanted to also highlight the concept of representation burden. It goes back to that we have to work twice as hard to get half as far, and that's not just a myth. When we think about, let's say, corporate America, for instance. When you see a Black person, stereotypically, one doesn't think executive. When you see a woman, stereotypically, one doesn't think engineer. And so oftentimes those in the minority have excess representational weight, meaning that we have to constantly prove and overprove ourselves. In my career, I've been told that I just need to put on my big girl panties and suck it up by a senior VP of HR after I'd been given a task that I completed, but then the needle moved and I had to do something different. And when I called her out on it, well, you just need to put on your big girl panties and suck it up.
So a lot of factors.
So that's a real lived experience for me.
No, I absolutely respect that. All right, let's go to this next clip. And this is the big controversy over the past few weeks. I do want to highlight, if you are a first-time listener or aware of the mental dialogue perspective, we typically don't touch hot button items that are super, super hot or kind of till after the fact. Typically, I would have moved this probably for another month, but since we don't pop up weekly anymore, we just kind of do this show from time to time. I'm going ahead and touching the Karmelo Anthony thing. I wish I did. I don't know this brother's name. I got this from one of people that I follow pages. I wish I knew this brother's name to give him his credit, but these are just some thoughts, and I'll get y'all responses. I'm not personally going to go too deep. I will highlight again for first-time watchers, I am not a huge fan of, again, not just because it's the hot button item, but I'm talking about mental dialogue, the psychology of our people. Sometimes the most hot button issues like the Karmelo Anthony situations, due to some historical trauma, due to some current trauma, sometimes the dialogues, even when trying to be helpful, can be harmful. So a lot of times I don't want to do these dialogues, but since I had an opportunity to have such an esteemed panel today, I wanted to say, all right, let's at least touch it. I don't want to do a deep dive, but I wanted to at least touch it. This clip is a little longer than most, so for everybody watching, you got to bear with us for about 4 minutes, and then we'll actually all give our response as well.
All right, so I got to say this, right? With all this discourse and back and forth that's going on, like, for people like me, this is not even about Karmelo Anthony anymore. This is about a ignorant, cult-like mentality that's on full display right now. You know what I'm saying? And what's scary about it is you have to assume that a lot of these people are raising children. And what you're advocating for, of course, they will never admit it. You will never admit it. But what you're advocating for is for our young men to go out into the world and overreact and crash out and put their well-being and their life and their freedom at risk over nothing. And if they just so happen to kill somebody, right? If they happen to kill somebody, if there's any sort of accountability, well, then that's an injustice, right? They're being done wrong if they have to be held accountable for killing somebody. This is what y'all are advocating for. And you would think that this would be a cautionary tale, that this would be a teaching moment that reminds us to say, hey, yo, yes, we do have to teach our kids to defend themselves. Teach them, put them in karate, taekwondo, boxing, whatever, right? But also the things that go along with that, being disciplined, self-control, emotional intelligence, like all those things are important too. And it's very mind-boggling to me that you have all these adults who are so invested in this situation, and none of those things is a part of their conversation. None of them. So, I don't know if y'all aware of this, but in every high school, every elementary school, every grade school, every kindergarten class, every preschool, there are children putting their hands on each other. Don't touch me, he kicked me, he punched me, he pushed me, get off me, I'ma sock you, I'ma steal you, push, shove, fight, rumble. This is very common amongst kids. And what we want, even though, yes, generally speaking, you shouldn't put your hands on nobody, but this happens. But what we don't want to happen in these situations is somebody using a weapon and somebody's child ending up dead. You know what I'm saying? And I got to say, man, I'm not trying to be disparaging to the women. I'm not saying it's all of y'all. But what I am saying is this. I was on Angela Rye. You know Angela Rye, the race hustler? I was on her page the other day. She had posted the picture that everybody's posting, I stand with Karmelo. And I looked in the comment section, man, and I seen all these women in there talking all this tough shit. Basically saying, hey, if you don't want to get stabbed up, don't put your hand, keep your hands to yourself. Fuck around and find out. Let me explain something to you. Fuck around and find out sound real cute until it's your son sitting in a cell having to be medicated because it's finally starting to sink in. It's setting into, hey, I fuck around, never go home. See, that shit is cute until it get real. And that's how I know y'all don't really care about these kids. Y'all don't care about these kids. We already have an epidemic of young black men and teens dying and going to jail over nothing. Over nothing. And this is what y'all standing on. Y'all standing on the idea that, hey, a minor altercation, if you get into a minor altercation, a shoving or shit talking, if you happen to pull out a weapon and kill the other kid, well then, you know, that's their fault. You shouldn't be held. This is the message that y'all are sending to these young people. And this is why I'm saying I don't want to hear nothing else about the system. It's not the system, it's you. It's you. Y'all are sending y'all children to prison. Y'all are setting y'all kids up for failure. It ain't no motherfucking system. It's you. And I need y'all to know that shit, man.
We are offering a meritocracy around here, so we'll let you go first on that one. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. Any thoughts?
Oh, you talking to me?
Yes, yeah. So you lead. Yeah, you lead the way on that one. Any thoughts on? Brother said a lot.
Oh, my bad. So again, this is one of these things where there are two sides to this, and they're both very important. So I want to be clear. I don't know the facts of the case. I try to read up a little bit. I haven't followed this. I'm not very versed. So I want to be careful. So let me just speak high level, right? My basic high level understanding is these are high school students. There's an altercation. He has a knife in his book bag. He pulls out. He stabs his kid. So high level, let's pretend that there is no racism in the world. If there's no racism in the world, I would look at Kyle Rittenhouse and say, why did you show up here with a gun to a protest? And I would say to this young man, why did you show up here with a knife? If there's no racism in the world, high level, I would ask them both the same question. And they both need to sort of justify that. And so on the surface, not knowing the facts of the case, if you say I was in an altercation, I was defending myself. If you're two high school students defending yourselves, you could defend yourself with your fist. Like, we don't actually have to stab anyone. Like that doesn't necessarily justify the use of a weapon. In the same way, but there is racism in the world. And I think what a lot of people are reacting to is, why is it that George Zimmerman gets to literally track someone down who's a child, get into a fight, pull out a gun and say, I was defending myself, and this black person can't use the same fist? Like, I understand their frustration. There's a duality that just unfortunately cannot be addressed. And so, yes, I understand the one side who says, why can't I do what he does? This is racist. And I understand the other side that says, in a perfect world, George Zimmerman and Kyle Rittenhouse should also be locked up. Like, I don't think anyone should be able to just say, oh, self-defense, I killed someone. Well, was the defense proportionate to the threat? You know what I mean? But it's not a perfect world. And this is why people get very triggered and this gets very emotional. I understand why people are angry on both sides.
I got you. I
and
understand.
Unfortunately, black people always have to look for perfect victims, and he's just not it.
No, I definitely understand it. And I'm gonna say this kind of to you as well. And I get it. It was a long clip, so it definitely can lose your attention. Respond to the clip. I'll just highlight that to you. Respond to the actual clip. All right, Brother George, any thoughts? Any thoughts?
Yeah,
to what that brother had to say?
Yes, sir. I've been talking a lot about this the past couple of weeks, and I'll say this. I have noticed the same thing. This really exhibited a chasm as far as black people. I did see a lot of people say, well, I'm glad he killed a white boy. And the thing about it is that we can no longer operate in that area because we're killing ourselves. We have to hold people accountable. We can't allow race to become our identity to the point where we negate wrongdoing based on racial trauma or preconceived notions. And to see my people, some of my people, applaud that and not see it for what it is, which was murder, it saddens me and it makes me worrisome about the future. So he's absolutely right in what he's saying. And let me say this, and then I'm done. That does not mean that there are not systemic things in the way that cloud the issue or make it more difficult to discern. But at the core, he took a knife to school and he murdered someone. So we need to let that be paramount and not fall back into identity politics and be racist ourselves.
All right, good stuff. Latrice, your thoughts? Again, challenging y'all to respond to the clip. I'll just keep saying that.
So I think he's wrong because in the sense where Karmelo Anthony's own mother on the stand did not argue that the killing was justified. She asked for mercy and said he was sorry. So that aspect, regardless of what we saw in the comments, his mother acknowledged what he had done, that it was wrong, that he was sorry, and have mercy. And so we get into anti-Black womenness in some of that statement that he made. And we need to be mindful of that also. And the fact that nowhere in his statement did he say anything about the fathers And so that was troublesome for me. Also with the knife, that's he didn't have the tool that you use to do whatever you need to do to your track shoes. So apparently they sometimes use knives, and so that's why he had the knife. So it's not like he brought a knife to a track meet for no reason.
Okay.
I think that there's a gap between what happened in the courtroom and the comment section. And I think a lot of times in that comment section, people are, they're being keyboard warriors, as they say. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not raising their children to be disciplined, to have emotional intelligence. People were just caught up in the emotionalism. But for the Karmelo Anthony case in and of itself, his parents acknowledged that what he did was wrong.
And I'll add this: when the situation, I was actually living near the area when this happened last April of last year, and I talked to my son about it recently. And the first thing that we came to, where his father failed him. My 21-year-old son said, "Why was his father not teaching him how to deal with situations like that?" So a lot of men that I've talked to regarding the issue are saying the father more or less didn't do his job, and didn't prepare him for this. And the thing is, there is no tool for sharpening spikes per se, but the fact of the matter is you're not supposed to have a knife at school. And considering they had a previous altercation and he has a knife in his bag, to me it looks like premeditated murder. But the fact of the matter is he could have got 99 years, he got 35. I think he'll be struck down to 20. So just because you ask for mercy doesn't mean it's guaranteed. And my mindset is I wasn't really worried about Karmelo Anthony. I was more so thinking about the grieving father who buried his son. I'm a father, I'm a man, I'm a Christian before I'm black. So I'm not gonna buy into identity politics, which I think this just led to.
And so I'm gonna make this comment. I'm gonna share some comments from a good friend of mine, Ashley Johnson Alfred. She's a lawyer down in Louisiana, and she made some comments. So I'm gonna make that the gist of my comments. I'll simply say, from my personal perspective, that at the end of the day, it was a multi-tool knife. Again, I do understand that that's the school policy. I know when I was in high school, we could take a small pocket knife to school when I was in high school. Again, that doesn't make it right. I'm just speaking kind of objectively here and say, hey, I definitely understand the rule, if you will. But yeah, I definitely don't understand premeditated sentencing for a fight. Doesn't make sense. Typically, that's typically not premeditated in that sense. And the last part of it, the last part I'll say, and then I'll read these comments from Ashley. And the last part is clearly the number of years on the sentences is very typical of the systemic stuff we see inside of sentencing that come for African Americans. So I'm not saying individually. I actually agree with a lot of that what that brother had to say. And I'll even say, Latrice, to you in the sense of, if he's responding directly to those who are making those emotional comments, if you will. Again, I love the fact that you said, hey, the mother did not do this, which is obviously very important to this conversation. I would say that unfortunately, a lot of the times when people are being keyboard warriors, that emotion is a piece of who they are. So I'm not saying he's necessarily wrong about those in the comments, and I feel like the guy was just kind of talking to the collective, as he said, this is not about Karmelo. And I'm saying I agree 1,000% with everything he's saying, but I will highlight, I feel like there is an aspect of those who are feeling like, when he said, F around, fuck around and find out. There are people in the community that are teaching boys to be emotional versus just handling it hand to hand. I'm just kind of throwing it out. So I do agree with that brother in that sense. Now, here's what the lawyer from Louisiana had to say. Again, a good friend of mine. So bear with me as I read through this. She says, it wasn't in my mind to discuss Karmelo Anthony because people really just wanted to argue. Now that it is died down, I have 3 points, just 3. The justice system in America was never built to afford people of color the right of self-defense. In no period in American history have Black people ever been worthy enough to argue defense of their things, families, or self. She highlighted a skilled Black defense attorney would have known how to handle and navigate this, but I digress. She's talking about the Karmelo Anthony case. Number 2, she says the jurisdiction matters. Certain verdicts and sentences won't make sense to people who aren't familiar with Southern politics that are especially prevalent in places such as Texas, Louisiana, and Alabama. The incarceration rates alone should tell you everything you need to know about the justice system below the Mason-Dixon. Texas has one of the most active death rows in the nation. They've held 4 executions already in 2026, with 4 more to go before December. I don't play in states that never let their execution chambers get cold. Y'all shouldn't either. I am not of the belief that we need to teach Black children to assimilate in order to be safe. I also refuse to teach my children that they cannot defend themselves. However, I will absolutely teach my children to read the rooms they are in. In a white county, at a white school with white sheriffs and white juries, my children absolutely would not be in an event pointing a knife at anybody. Number 3, lastly, 2 things can both be true. I do not agree with Karmelo taking the life of over a minor confrontation. I also do not agree with the state of Texas taking 35 years of life in the same confrontation involving a clear lack of malicious intent. Actions do have consequences that goes for both sides, but I'll never downplay the fact that white consequences look nothing like Black consequences. Ask Louisiana, ask Texas, ask Oklahoma, ask Alabama, ask Georgia, ask Mystical. The rules are not universal down here. That's what we need to teach the children. Justice for Karmelo Anthony, #. I love her statement. I'll kind of leave it at that.
Can I correct you on some data though?
Oh yeah, please. Always, yeah. So I was
as,
get the information right. Absolutely.
As far as Black women being emotional and raising their sons to be emotional, actually, the research shows that Black parents as a whole, Black single mothers included, raise them to suppress their emotions, and that actually contributes to those outbursts. Right. When they have those kinds of reactions. So actually, I think what everything that we've heard about Karmelo Anthony is that he was a child who was not prone to those types of emotional outbursts. And so when we raise our kids not to suppress emotion, that's not healthy. And they have those moments where so I just wanted to correct you on that statement.
Right. What was said? What did I say incorrectly? Because there are outliers. I was just reading as well, so I'm not. That's why I'm not just for me. It was something.
We were talking about the women and the keyboard warriors and things of that nature. Yeah.
Okay. And so what I'm highlighting, I'm talking about the suppression of the emotions like that. I'm saying that type of teaching is what leads to being emotional. Like that's
okay. So what I heard you say was that because they teach them to be emotional. So maybe I misunderstood you.
No, yeah. I'm just saying we're saying the same thing as I kind of highlighting. Yeah. You end up being too emotional because of how you're taught, if that makes sense. But go ahead, Brother George. You want to say something as well?
Yeah, I've been living in Texas for 8 years, and I've seen the state of Texas get vilified, but it's like that here for everyone. I've seen cases where white people have gotten their boots smoked, so to speak. Legally, this state does not play around, and the county that he lives in, a lot of people say he was in an all-white Frisco is more diverse than what people think it is. So I think people are just taking preconceived notions and kind of running with it. But I think if we kind of wear that down a little bit, it'll help us see things a little bit clearer. But the fact remains, he's guilty of murder and he confessed. So that is what it is. He got justice. He got sentenced. So
you think the 35 years is justice? I'm curious. Do you think that
he could have got 99? I mean, he could. I mean, of course. Yeah.
So
here's one thing.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, here's one thing I refuse to do. I refuse to conflate one case with another. So when I look at issues like this, I'm going to look at this individual case. I can't worry about what happened in this case. It's totally different circumstances. But yeah, there is.
I didn't say nothing about another case. I asked you simply, did you think the 35 years was legit? You actually think it is, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I do want to clarify. I didn't bring in another case. I also would challenge you, and I also would challenge you, if you're personally willing to do it, go look at the sentencing difference in Texas between the races. It's clear.
I have.
Yeah.
So there was a similar case where the guy. There was a similar case where
it's across everybody. There's a clear distinction. Again, I'm a legal studies major. Looking at the numbers, the numbers are not nowhere close to the same.
They're not. They're clearly not, and that's something we need.
So if you say, but I'm saying if you say, oh, they're slamming everybody, and the data shows differently, you can't say they're slamming everybody.
Right.
Well, there's more. I put it this way: there's a lot more purity than people think. Do I think the 35 years? Consider he could have got 99. Do I think it's a little high? Yes, I do. I'm not saying that 35 years is necessarily just, but we need to look at what goes into that and try to address those issues and try to even things out systemically. And as far as the judicial
Well, you
system
just
is
said you're
concerned.
taking. If you, I'm going to challenge you. If you're doing an individual case, this was a very unique individual situation. So
Mhm.
there's nothing to talk about collectively or systemically about an individual case. That's something I'm saying to everybody, not just to you. But sometimes we do that. So it would be a mistake to start saying systemically based on his unique case. And I was just saying simply in his unique case. Typically, you won't find people that are in prison for 35 years involved in a fight. You won't find throughout our whole prison system throughout the country. If you got in a fight and killed someone, you won't. He might be one of the only kids with 35 years. I'm just pointing that out. Let's go to the next clip and keep this conversation moving. We are at the top of the hour, so I'm gonna play a quick 30-second commercial and go directly into another clip.
What are we really afraid of? Not money, not abuse, not the truth. Join the Mental Dialogue Live experience, The Fear Factor, an unforgettable evening featuring powerful conversations on financial fears, domestic violence, and child sexual abuse with licensed therapist Shanae Benito, plus wine tasting, networking, and real dialogue. Friday, July the 17th, 7 p.m. at Urban Grind in Atlanta, because healing begins where silence ends. All details at mentaldialogue.com.
Last time, I left you with a question. What happens if you take a black neighborhood and a white neighborhood with identical conditions, same poverty, same joblessness, same instability, and compare their violence? In 1995, two criminologists, Robert Sampson and William Julius Wilson, took that question on directly. The result is called the racial invariance thesis, and it's the load-bearing wall of this entire conversation. Here's what it says. When you compare communities facing the same structural conditions, the relationship between race and violence basically disappears. White communities under the same concentrated disadvantage produce similar levels of violence. Race isn't the cause. The conditions are the cause. Race just predicts who got forced into the conditions. That's the whole ballgame. Violence isn't tracking race, it's tracking circumstance. And we already know from the map how people got sorted into those circumstances. But now I have to tell you the detail that makes this study almost brutal. When researchers go looking for white neighborhoods that face the same level of concentrated disadvantage as the hardest hit black neighborhoods, they can barely find any. They're rare, almost to the point of not existing. Think about what that means. The conditions we're talking about, that deep, packed generational disadvantage, are so racially concentrated in this country that there's almost no white equivalent to even compare against. Sampson himself pointed this out. The exposure is that lopsided, so the comparison is rigged before it starts, but not in the direction the black-on-black crime crowd thinks. It's rigged because we built the conditions for one group that we almost never built for the other. And then we turned around and blamed the group for how people respond to the conditions we created. So let's recap where we are. Crime is intraracial because it's local. It's local because neighborhoods are segregated. Segregation was engineered by policy. Inside those neighborhoods, concentrated disadvantage drives violence. And when you control for that disadvantage, race stops mattering. Every single link in that chain is sourced. None of it required the word culture, and none of it blamed anybody for the color of their skin. So where did those conditions actually come from in the real economy and living memory? Why did the disadvantage get so concentrated so fast in exactly these places? That's an economic story, and it's next.
Latrice, I'll let you start there. I always highlight anytime we have this conversation about black on black crime. I said it only gets racialized in this country. At the end of the day, we have high crime areas. I don't mind calling out a high crime area for what it is. It's a high crime area. It has race has nothing at all to do with this, but we've racialized crime in this country pretty much for a long time. I used to say since the 70s, but the more I've been following that lady's name is Grace, and she goes and follow her on IG at Academic Dissent is what she goes by on IG. Latrice, I'll let you respond first though.
So that study was first run in 1995, and then they ran it again in 2018 with findings that were similar. And I actually just had this conversation this past week because someone that was here they said black on black crime, and I immediately said, no, sir, we don't do that in this house. It's crimes of proximity. and it's predicated upon socioeconomic factors that create the circumstances that lead to the crimes that occur. So you have this in Hispanic communities, you have this in Asian communities, you have this in white communities, but it was specifically called out in the 70s to highlight the intrinsic violent nature of Black people. And so we need to be mindful of what we consume and how we allow that to color the lens through which we view the world, because there is no such thing as Black on Black crime when you look at it in the when you take it from a racial perspective. These things happen in all neighborhoods that are socioeconomically poor, and the findings that those situations are, it's becoming more and more difficult to find the neighborhoods for white folks that have those specific factors leading to violence is in and of itself something that needs to be discussed. Because if you read, I forgot the name of the book, but it basically talks about how this country was intentionally segregated the way that it is, and the impact that those segregations still have on us today. So we have to begin at some point in this country to begin to address the structural issues and stop blaming the folks who have been pushed into those categories.
Yeah, but let me add one thing you said so that people don't hear it this way. You said seek socioeconomically poor. A couple of other factors: the concentration of the actual population, meaning highly populated, dense populations. Because you can take, I'm from the South, so I always like to highlight in the rural South, because you're not densely populated, there's not enough interaction to create the situations that happen in densely populated. And there's the lack of joblessness specifically to a radius. So all of those end up being factors for how humans respond, not how any race responds. Brother George, any thoughts to that clip or anything Latrice had to say?
Yes, sir. I think Latrice made a beautiful point where she said, because I'm of the belief too. I like for us to get away from saying Black on Black crime. Like she said, it's crimes of proximity. Asians kill other Asians, whites kill other whites, Blacks kill other Blacks. This is the way it is, and I think we need to focus on the issues that cause crime in general, and not just focus on Black crime. Because I think in doing so, we somehow miss the point and can't get to the crux of what the issue really is.
Yeah, I would agree 1,000% with that. Brother D'Juan, your thoughts about the clip or anything anybody had to say, and we'll go to another clip from Academic Descent as she expounds on what she just said on the next clip.
Yeah, again, it just goes back to this theme of anti-Blackness, right? We're addicted to it, and so it's just another manifestation of that. Let's talk about Black on Black crime rather than actually solving anything in this country. And it just, honestly, it's not even like an interesting discussion. It gets old and it gets very tiring. Because again, the data is very clear. The best predictor of violent crime is joblessness. That is, the data is there. And so rather than talking about that, it's just better just to, we just hate Black people. So let's throw out some other shit. Black on Black crime. Okay.
I love it, man. Again, this is what the idea here at Mental Dialogue is for people to hear other thoughts than the propaganda, than what's pushed in mass media. So
let's connect to that.
I love your dismissiveness, because you're pointing out, hey, I've understood this for a long time, so I'm not even interested in another one of these conversations. So I respect your how you're bringing it. But go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
But let's connect it to the conversation about media, right? Because that is so powerful. Because you have a situation where we understand that more people die at the hands of drunk drivers every year than folk getting killed in the street by the gangs. Okay. Overwhelmingly, those are white men. And not a single one of you sees a white man behind the wheel and gets nervous and wants to call the police. Not a single one of you will clench up when you see a white guy and like, I don't know, police may want to just check him out just to be sure. Not a one of you do that, because you've not been programmed by media to fear that man behind the wheel. But by the data, you should be effing terrified. And so when we look at financial crimes, white collar crimes, not a one of you going into the bank is nervous, like, is this person gonna steal my? Not a one of you. But the data is far more likely. So stop acting. And this is what irritates me. And I'm trying to be calm. This is what irritates me about people.
You can be passionate, brother. Go ahead.
Well,
we do smart conversations, but we don't mind the emotion. Go ahead and let it out, brother. Say it like you feel it.
My dad is a preacher. My folks are classic Pentecostals, and I told my dad, I said, Dad, at this point in my life, saying fuck is like and or the. It's about the same. And so I'm just trying to be a little composed out here. But it shit gets very tiring because, and this is why I stop arguing with people, because they always try to lean on data to make these arguments. And it's like, this is not about data. You just don't like black folk. Just say that and stop pretending like, because if you're really on data, you would live very differently, and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, yeah, they're like, again, and Latrice again does this for a living, so I can't compare it to her with this or whatever. At the end of the day, we understand, especially when you get to media. Media's going to pull the data. They may even use the right numbers, but they're going to do confirmation bias and pull the data to make a point. Whereas what we attempt to do, and again, I'm thankful when Latrice corrected some information earlier, but what we attempt to do on this page is to present it objectively, because here it is. Data never tells you the full story. It can't, because you cannot survey everybody. Data gives you a trend, and sometimes you can speak to a general trend. And a lot of times when people like myself who love data, get it. If you don't understand that I'm trying to present it to you, all the data objectively to talk about the trend, you may think I'm saying this is how it is. Data can never tell you how it is, but it can identify a trend if the study was done correctly too. There is a objective scientific way to do studies, and some people bunk that up because they're trying to bunk it up quite often.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Latrice. Right. Any thoughts on that? We're going to go to for another clip from Doris as she continues to break down the black on black from a very objective statistical standpoint. But any other thoughts before I play the next clip?
I just wanted to say that the more you dig into the data, the more people like me get fearful when a weird looking white person gets on the elevator with me.
Right. And we got to remember too, data is not empirical. You got to look at control size, who did the study, and things like that. So I think a lot of times people are using data to justify their racist notions or to substantiate their bias, and oftentimes.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Let's go to this one again. This is why I like this lady. I just found her in the last 2 weeks. I told her, I said, hey, I hope you look at the show. I'm going to use your clips today.
So we know concentrated disadvantage drives violence, but where did it come from? How did it get so concentrated in Black urban neighborhoods specifically? For that, we go to William Julius Wilson, one of the most important sociologists America has produced, and his book, When Work Disappears. Here's the story. For a stretch of the 20th century, you could get a job in an American city with no college degree, work in a factory, and build a stable working class life. Those manufacturing jobs were the latter, and a huge number of Black families had finally, after the Great Migration, gotten access to the cities where those jobs were. And then the jobs left. Starting in the 1970s, deindustrialization gutted the urban core. Factories closed, moved south, moved overseas, or got automated. The work that had been the foundation of city neighborhoods just evaporated. And it evaporated right at the moment Black Americans had finally reached those neighborhoods. The timing here is vicious. White families had already been handed the tools to follow jobs to the suburbs. Remember the FHA loans, the highways, the whole engineered escape route from a few episodes ago. Black families, locked out of those same tools by the same policies, were stuck in the urban core when the economic floor fell out from under it. So you don't just get poverty. You get what Wilson called the disappearance of work itself as an organizing force in a community. When a neighborhood has jobs, it has structure, routine, role models, money flowing through local businesses. Pull the work out, and all of that unravels at once. That's how you manufacture concentrated disadvantage in a single generation. And notice, again, that not one piece of this is about Black people being different. It's about a factory closing and a family being legally trapped next to it. Put any group on earth through that exact sequence and you get the same result. We know this because we're watching it happen to other groups right now. So far, we've built the structural case all the way from a phrase down to a closed factory. But there's a second half to this story, and it's uglier. Because the conditions are one thing. The way we choose to talk about them and who we choose to blame is another. And that choice is old. Much older than the 70s. Next time, we go back to the 1890s.
So I watched that next clip. I'm not going to play it here, but that's what, like I said, when she said the 70s, that's the part where I personally had researched. And then she breaks down where the dialogue about our community in reference to crime. I knew some of what she said, but the next video really goes deeper. But you got, Brother George, sound like you wanted to speak, but I'll going to let you start off. But again, I'm just highlighting. Now we're talking about the real reason versus the dialogue and the propaganda that we're constantly going back and forth. That D'Juan says he's tired of even doing it with anyone, and so this is the dialogue in a sense that really should be had in reference to how to improve those things versus we have dialogues about the individual because we're blaming culture and we're blaming race when they literally have nothing to do with it, when it's these structural things, as she just said, is starting to hit other communities based on things that we're experiencing right now. Your thoughts about what she had to say? Go ahead, brother.
I think I don't think this is so much a cultural issue. I think it's more of an economic issue in the sense that back during the 70s in Detroit, you had a tremendous boom in black prosperity because of the auto plants, but that prosperity was also garnered to other communities. And what you saw at the end of the 70s, the early 80s, was a shift from a manufacturing based company to more consumer country. And when Clinton signed NAFTA, they pretty much kind of put the nail in the coffin of a lot of manufacturing jobs. Now, I do see the current administration trying to reverse that tide, but I think if we become more of a manufacturer-based economy, especially in terms of jobs, we'll see things improve, not only for us as black people, but for all people, because we need those jobs back. We sold them away for a new economy that really hasn't matriculated. But I think it's more systemic about, America's focus as far as what we want to build our economic base on first, instead of a systemic or a specific cultural issue.
Now, I respect that. I would definitely have to get you back on the politically conscious, so I won't do too much here. Those jobs are never coming back, brother.
Right.
I
say they were trying, but
yeah. It don't matter how much you try. I just kind of highlight that.
Right.
Again, I want to go too deep into the political stuff. But I think Brother D'Juan pointed this out when we were historically, from the first clip we played, 80% of the cotton that was being produced was produced by America for the reasons that he's talked about. So the reason that everything is made in China is due to the cheap labor of making the goods or whatever. And so no companies are bringing those manufacturing back no matter what, because they can't do it at cost, and our wages, simply the wages that make sense in our country, will always be too high to bring that back. Latrice, any thoughts to either what the Grace had to say, or either one George had to say?
Sure. There's a book that I read recently called How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America. And it essentially, the whole central theme of this book is saying that the American economy developed in ways that actually depended on the exploitation of Black labor, while at the same time restricting Black ownership, political power, and economic independence. And if we really dig into the data, we see that consistently is the through line to what happens in this country. When you bring it to present day society, the Black unemployment rate is much higher, almost twice as high as the white unemployment rate. And it's not because we're not qualified. It's not because we don't want to work. It's for other reasons. And even when when they are working, they're paid less with the same qualifications and experience. And so that old adage, while we say we shouldn't have to depend on those old things like work twice as hard to get half as far, they are still very relevant in today's marketplace. And so I absolutely agree. And if you haven't read How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America, it's a great book.
And I'll add just a couple of little data points popped in my head as you were speaking. We actually went through a unique period. I would say I think it's about the last 8 years, not including the last couple of years, just calling it what it is. But before, we're in 26 now. So 2024 to about, I think, 2016, we actually experienced a period where our unemployment wasn't double. Because it's typically, if you go through the history prior to about 2016, we were always double unemployment. Mm-hmm. So when the country was hitting all-time lows in unemployment, we actually had cut down to double, and we just recently have almost doubled again in the last 2 years. So we're back to historically where we've been in the last couple of years. I'm talking about Black unemployment specifically.
Right, but that's where you have to disaggregate the data too, because what types of roles were Black people filling, and how did it rank on the pay scale? Because
absolutely, you're right when you say, hey, we're still typically 20 to 30% pay less. Like that didn't necessarily go away.
Right.
There was one little period, and again, I want to go too deep into the details. We actually had a period since it was the first time since the 70s under Biden where the wages actually went up for us. That hadn't happened. It's like when Brother George was talking about prosperity of the manufacturing age. We were in a sense the wage gap specifically with Black Americans to whites was actually making a jump, and then right after the gas stuff that happened in the 70s, we've never made that jump except under Biden there was wage gap increase for the first time since the 70s. Brother D'Juan, any thoughts about anything you've said, or we can go to the next clip?
Really, I think they kind of nailed that. I mean, I don't want to get into a politically conscious joint, so let's leave it there. And actually, I got to bounce, but I appreciate it, man.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you got to get out of here. No problem, man. I'm going to keep you for one more tiresome conversation. And this is real quick. This is a real quick clip. I'm not even going to spend a lot of time on it. I want to show how bad, as you've been saying, I wasn't even calling it anti-Blackness, but I'm going to call it that because you're correct. This clip is an example of how data gets misused in the worst way. So I kind of called out D'Juan Hopewell earlier. Again, he just kind of moved the group around a little bit. That's a kind of a, this right here is just a blatant misuse of data. And I would say because of the data that we're always hearing, I think people would agree with what we're about to see, hook, line, and sinker. And I'm telling you off top, it's completely wrong. But let me play this quick clip and then I'll let you go after this one, Brother D'Juan.
We let the guys know that we're African-American males are 6% of the U.S. population, but we're upwards of 60% of the U.S. prison population. I give them another statistic that they found impossible to believe. I tell them, let's look at the United States of America, and then I draw a map or draw a grid. I said, of all these states, which one do you believe has the greatest incarceration rate? And then sometimes they'll tell me what they think. Then I'll say, of all these states, these 50 states, which one do you think has the greatest Black population? And they'll think about it. And I said, but let's cut to the chase. In the United States of America, the 50 states that are in front of you, I was told, African-American males are number one in the prison population in every state on that map. What about Alaska and Hawaii? They got a busing program and they compete. The states compete for those dollars that go to the incarcerated group. So we want to let them know you don't want to be a part of this. And then part of that process, that ongoing process, lets them know that, hey, here's how you can stay away from this. And then we put those things in perspective.
So I guess if you put on a suit, and it sounds like he's talking to people outside of the United States, because he said I'm making an assumption on that part of who he may be talking to or who his audience is, but you can jump on a podcast, jump on a suit, and state data. And the only number that he even got right was that African Americans are 6% of the population. There's no other number that he mentioned, nothing else that he said that's even close to true. But people will receive that hook, line, and sinker. Again, Brother D'Juan specifically pointed out that we all receive the anti-Blackness. We think it as well. Mm-hmm. And that's why you can easily jump on a podcast on a suit and state these numbers. And it's here it is. Let me state the numbers objectively. We're African-American male, or 6% of the population. It is still egregious that in the Fed system, we make up 38, those men make up 38% of the Fed system. In the stateside system, they make up 34% of the state system. That's egregious. Right. So why do I got to go on a podcast and say 60%? Why does that even get done? I'm challenging, again, this is mental dialogue, to raise your intellectual capacity for why someone would, that 38% is egregious. I need to double it to make my point. Or if I'm doubling it to make my point, you need to think what's behind it. So if you would easily receive and believe what that brother had to say, it's just challenging those who are listening or watching. If you would receive what he said, hook, line, and sinker, and not ask, well, why would the brother double it? And this is not even specific to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he just heard the information himself and just repeated it. I'm not saying he went and doubled it himself, but these are the numbers that we easily agree with. He goes in all 50 states. In all 50 states, It's 17 states. We ain't even 5%.
Mhm.
How long? That's just as black people. So let's cut that 5% to 2.5% males. There's states we're not 2.5%. We're not the leading incarceration. We're not leading anything in that situation. Again, I don't mind talking about the issues with the 38%, but we've already kind of smartly had this conversation in a smart way that we're not going to egregiously make race the issue, because when it comes to crime, humans do what they do based on the condition. That doesn't give them an excuse. That does not get anybody off the hook. But we're not going to make the mistake on mental dialogue of racializing a conversation that actually is a human condition. I remember, I forget the rabbi in Chicago who's real known for trying to help the gangs in Chicago. I can't think of his name right now, but he's always highlighted. He's like, if we just said this is what American kids are doing, this whole situation would change. Versus people saying, "Oh, look at what those gangs are doing, and you should fix it yourself." He just said if we actually just told it what it was, these are kids that are harming. But again, that's just specifically in a high crime area in Chicago. I didn't grow up in a high crime area. I grew up in a very poor area, but it was spread out in South Carolina, a couple of murders my entire life. But we have this thought and these beliefs that here's how we act, and we're leading the incarceration rate. All right, Brother D'Juan, I know you got to go, so I'll get your thoughts first and let you go.
Yeah, man. I just think we should be putting heavy tariffs on podcast mics. I really think that's the change that we need in this country. We ask about people's motivations. I think some people are legitimately just ignorant and not adept at research, and so they hear things thrown on the internet and they just repeat them. And I don't think they're malicious. I do think other people are malicious or ill-intended. And I don't know this man to say which one he is. He legitimately could just be a little bit dumb and he just heard some shit and ran with it. And then again, there are people just for clicks or whatever it might be. The things that people do for clicks in this economy, in this world that we have, it is very, I would say it's quite scary, is all I can say.
Good stuff. Thank you for your time. Before you go, brother, tell them how they can keep up with what you're doing at Black Jack Podcast.
First of all, I would say tune in here because y'all talking about more meaningful things than I'm ever going to talk about. But definitely, check out the Blackjack Podcast wherever you download your podcast. Hit me up on social media, Blackjack Pod. Yeah, man, just check in. All right.
All right. Thank you for your time, brother. All right, Brother George. Any response again to what I would say is a complete misuse of data? We've kind of consistently had that theme on this conversation, but I'm really challenging. Lost that brother. So Latrice, I'll go to you. He's been having to jump in and jump out, so hopefully he'll jump back on.
I think that it was very telling when he mentioned Hawaii and Alaska. How he kind of just it made no sense what he said after that, and the reason for that, and this is why I think his intent was malicious, because he just mumbled some mumbo jumbo when he brought up Hawaii and Alaska, because had he actually pulled in the data, it actually shows that the Native American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders are those that are largely incarcerated, which actually lends itself to the concept of concentrated disadvantage. Absolutely. And policy history tracks that whichever group structurally gets boxed in, those are the ones who get massively incarcerated. So I believe his intent was malicious in misrepresenting that data.
No, absolutely. Right. And then speaking of it, like for everybody watching, if based on how you hear the propaganda of crime and black on black crime in our country, if we were to highlight, what are the two most violent states? Let me get everybody sit on that for a second. Just everybody watching. Well, if you had to guess who are the two most violent states in our country, whatever pops in your mind, they are Alaska and New Mexico, and we ain't there. Right. Go ahead, Brother George. Any thoughts on, again, I just wanted to kind of point out how people misuse data, and I would agree, Latrice, that it was maliciously done, but people will accept it hook, line, and sinker because we do hear all of the data racialized. And to our point, that concentrated poverty that she's speaking of, is if you're in those conditions, is what humans do. So we need to just take that conversation out of being racialized, is my perspective. But your thoughts on what that brother had to say?
I wholeheartedly agree with everybody on the panel. I think it was malicious. I think that it was racialized. I see people all the time squelch out data but they don't give context to it. And to me, to try to say that black men are the most incarcerated, which may be true, but to not add other factors such as illiteracy rates, fatherless homes, and add those statistics, to me is malicious and intellectually dishonest.
Good stuff. All right, y'all. I only got one more clip, and this is just kind of an interesting thought, Latrice. I think you will see where I'm going with this because you were happy to be at our last live experience where we discussed what would the world be if we only had one race. I'm not saying that this clip is directly related to it, but I know you'll hear the hints of kind of why I wanted to leave us with this thought for our last clip. So this is our last clip. We'll get both of y'all thoughts, and we'll let people, George, we'll let people know how they can keep in contact with you. Thank you for being on the show, but let's do this last clip and get out of here.
That's my biggest thing with this whole era that we're in right now. Whenever I see something happen with Trump now, I say, what are white people going to do about it? That's my question.
100%.
What are you white people going to do about what's happening in this country?
Do you know what, man? The thing that is crazy to me is it's like ever since we stopped being hunter-gatherers and humanity started forming governments and cities, the shtick has always been, okay, I'm going to separate these two groups of people so that I can control the whole thing. And it's like, you still don't see it. Like, it has been consistently happening for millennia. And it's like, they're still doing the same thing. Like Lyndon B. Johnson said it. You know, you teach
the poor.
You teach a white man to feel like he's better. You teach the
poor
lowest
white man to feel like he's better than the richest black man.
The richest black man, and you can rob him blind.
Yeah.
And they just got it on tape. Mm-hmm. But that's been the strategy the whole time. And it's like y'all don't see it yet. It's just, I don't know.
I like to say the rich white man convinced the poor black man the rich white man convinced the poor white man that he's poor because of niggas.
Boom.
But now it's niggas, trans, immigrants.
Yeah, anybody who's other.
That's right.
You convince them to fight against each other. You got the whole kit and caboodle, bro. I didn't mean to come here and be all,
song called Who's Gonna Save Us? Where you're wearing a Black Panther beret with black leather and gloves.
Looking like Bobby Seale.
What are you talking about?
But you look good on there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Who do you want to save us, though?
Us. Us. I mean, there's so much power just within our own black community. I mean, I heard y'all talking about Target before. It's just like we have so much power that we don't tap into.
Right.
And it's up to us.
So something that I quite often say on this show is we quite often fall for the trick bag of race. Literally, in the divisions that's stroked in this country, if you find yourself on one side of it, it's being done intentionally. And once I'm aware that it's been done intentionally, I'm not going to buy into it or play into it. And so that's kind of where Eric Benet on that clip on the Breakfast Club kind of goes like, hey, this was done intentionally. It's still being done. It's the oldest trick in the book. And if you are on one side of it, then you have failed for the trick bag. Brother George, your thoughts. You were already kind of highlighting that earlier in the show that's something that we fall for from my perspective, from your perspective. But any more thoughts on what Brother Eric Benet had to say? And if you could even tie it into how it ties into today's dialogue from your perspective, and then at that point, I'll ask how people can keep up with you.
Right. Well, as I've always said, it's not just racism. Divisiveness in general is profitable, and those that choose to oppress and manipulate, they have a golden goose with racism because it'll always keep going. And if you notice, it's even things when racial things and stereotypes flare up, gun sales go up. So every instance of divisiveness, somebody profits from it. As long as there's profitability and discontent and divisiveness, it will continue. So they're going to control the narrative to make money. They don't control the narrative necessarily because they hate us or don't like us, but it puts money in their pockets, and money is what makes the world go round.
Fair enough. How can people follow you? I think I picked up again. Thank you for jumping on at the last minute, but I think you may even have a podcast. I know you write books, so tell people how they can follow you and everything. But thank you for your time on the show today, brother.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, and thank Latrice and the other gentlemen as well. You can follow me on Facebook under George P. Brooks. I have a podcast on Spotify called Musings. If you type in Musings, I'll come up. I've written a couple books. I just released a book a couple of weeks ago called The Meta Papers, which is a book on philosophy, nothing political, just philosophy and lived experience. And I also write for American Thinker, which is a leading conservative website. I've got several articles up on there. So I'm doing a lot of different things. If you Google me, it'll be a good way to get in touch with me. And thank y'all for having me on.
Nah, thank you for coming at the last minute, and yeah, we'll invite you back as well. All right, Latrice, you're the queen of the show. So again, a pretty in-depth dialogue, which is what we try to do, intelligent conversations on race, sex, and culture. Hopefully, for those who are watching, they're hearing, maybe heard something a little different than they're getting from mass media, which is again our purpose for being here. But your thoughts or how you want to wrap up, or as a matter of fact, I didn't even let you respond to the clip, so let me let you respond and then wrap us up.
Sure. I think it's a perfect way to conclude this show today. If we think about where we are as a society and how white racism has been a thing for the last couple of years, how DEI has been reframed. I actually had a conversation with someone who was talking about how their son didn't get a scholarship because a Black person got it, and therefore it was reverse racism. And I said that whole concept that you just spoke is predicated on racism itself, because what you're saying is that Black person only got that scholarship because they weren't of affirmative action and they weren't qualified, and your white son was, and so therefore it was reverse racism. Could it be that your white son just didn't meet the qualifications and that Black person did? Because this country doesn't give Black folk anything. We have to fight for it. So they've done an extraordinarily great job of making white people feel that Black people have taken things from them. And because we don't truly teach history in this country, because we are continuously trying to suppress the real history in this country, I'm not certain that's going to change. Because until folks know the true history without the suppression, and understand how those things still impact Black people today, they're going to consistently think that we get things that we don't earn when we outwork them in many instances and get paid less. And unfortunately, my grandmother told me this growing up. I was born in 1968, and unfortunately, that whole work twice as hard to get half as far still exists today. As far as finding me, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook and IG and TikTok as Treese Ross, on LinkedIn as Latrice Ross. My book, Falling Black in Love Again, will be coming out in a couple of months, and I will be launching the first meeting of the Well-Read Black Woman, the Well-Read Black Woman Dinner Society in October. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm not a Black woman, but I still can't wait to read your book.
We'll have honorary Black men.
That's all good. It's all good. I do want to highlight the book you were trying to think of earlier. I'm pretty sure it was The Color of Law, maybe, that you were referring to. You made a reference to earlier about how the segregation was done intentionally and economically. So I do want to bring that reference and source to the table. For me to close out the show, I'll highlight, I do have a book called Re-Education of the Negro. It's short commentaries that challenge our thoughts on race, sex, and culture. And so you can definitely pick that up at Amazon. If you are in Atlanta, I'm going to close out with the same commercial I played at the 11 o'clock hour, which is every third Friday. If you're in Atlanta, we have the smartest networking event in the city. As I always say, we're a place for where intelligent Black people have something to do on a Friday night. At Urban Grind, we are doing the Mr. Dollar Live experience, and the title is The Fear Factor. We're going to talk about some very uncomfortable conversations. I have a therapist in the house. I don't have these conversations without professionals in the house as we talk about money fears, child abuse fears, domestic violence fears. So it's going to be a very dope dialogue with professionals in the house. So I'll play this video. Thank all of y'all for y'all time. We do pop up from time to time on the Mental Dialogue Perspective. We also have the Politically Conscious Show, which we try to pop up every week. So just go subscribe to the YouTube page, youtube.com/mental dialogue, and you'll keep up with all of our shows. Fortunately, they're all pop-up shows because I got to get everybody scheduled together. So with that said, thank y'all for your time. As I always say, all I ask is that you think.
What are we really afraid of? Not money, not abuse, not the truth. Join the Mental Dialogue Live experience, The Fear Factor, an unforgettable evening featuring Powerful conversations on financial fears, domestic violence, and child sexual abuse with licensed therapist Shanae Benito, plus wine tasting, networking, and real dialogue. Friday, July the 17th, 7 p.m. at Urban Grind in Atlanta, because healing begins where silence ends. All details at mentaldialogue.com.